Good morning and welcome to day 2 of the 2021 ISSRDC conference. We are very glad you all could join us. My name is Jim Way. I'm Executive Director of the American Astronautical Society, and it's my pleasure to be your MC for today's event. Before we begin, I wanted to take the opportunity to say a few words about us, the American Astronautical Society. AAS is a nonprofit technical society founded in 1954. Our mission is to advance all space science and exploration activities. We do that through our technical publications like our Journal of Astronautical Sciences and our well-known symposia like the Goddard Symposium, the Glenn Symposium, and the Von Braun Symposium, which is coming up October 12 through 14, hopefully in person down in Huntsville, Alabama. We also have our amazing technical conferences like our Astrodynamic Specialist Conference, our Spaceflight Mechanics Meeting, and our Guidance, Navigation, and Control Conference. You can find out about all of our symposia and technical conferences at our website at astronautical.org. We also work very often with partners on things like this, the ISSRDC conference. One main focus of ours with respect to this event is the technical sessions. These are taking place in just under 2 weeks, August 16 through 18, and are a great way to hear about some innovative concepts on a wide variety of topics like human health in space, technology development, Earth observation, the space economy, and much more. There are 60 presentations and posters, so there's sure to be something for everyone. Just like today, registration is free, so we strongly encourage you to join us for those. More information is on the agenda page at issconference.org. And finally, as I mentioned, AAS is a nonprofit membership organization, so we'd encourage you to join us. AAS members have great opportunities to convene and connect with peers and industry leaders to exchange information and ideas. If you're interested in joining, just visit astronautical.org and click on the membership tab for more information. With that stuff out of the way and onto the program. If you were here with us yesterday, you know we had an amazing first day. Dr. Francis Collins, Dr. Kate Rubins, leaders from across NASA, the aerospace industry, academia, all shared with us their vision and ideas for the future of research aboard the ISS and the commercialization of low Earth orbit. But don't worry if you weren't here with us yesterday. You can watch that all later, but today, we have a lot more in store for you, including time with Smithsonian Institution's Dr. Stofan and NASA's Dr. Thomas Zurbuchen, distinguished researchers, business leaders, investment experts, jam-packed day for sure. But we couldn't do this conference each year, virtual or in person, without the generous support of our sponsors. On behalf of the ISS National Lab, we want to thank the Boeing Company for serving as this year's ISSRDC Platinum sponsor, as they have for the 9 previous ISSRDC conferences. We're truly appreciative of Boeing's support. They have been and continue to be an extraordinary partner of the ISS National Lab. We'd also like to thank our silver sponsors, Airbus, KBR, Leidos, Northrop Grumman, Sierra Space, Space Tango, Teledyne Brown Engineering, and the Engineering and Innovative Technology Development Team at the University of Alabama. And thanks as well to our other exhibitors, Jacobs, Oceaneering, and TechShop. If you didn't get a chance yesterday to visit our sponsors at their virtual booths, you still have today and tomorrow to do so. When you visit a booth, you'll be automatically enrolled for a really cool giveaway of an Oculus Quest 2 VR headset, complete with access to the Emmy-nominated ISS Experience Episodes 1 and 2, created and generously provided by our partners, Felix and Paul Studios. You'll also receive an ISS Above device that lets you know where the ISS is at any given time. But you can't win if you don't visit our virtual exhibit hall. So be sure to make time for that. The winner will be announced tomorrow at 12:45 p.m., so be sure to tune in then. To give you a sneak peek at what you could win, here's a trailer from Felix and Paul Studios for ISS Experience Episode 1. Take a look.
Good evening, Expedition 58. Happy Hunter's Day, and we'll give you a call here shortly. When we got to orbit, it was nighttime, and all I could see was blackness. It is the most rawly human that I've ever felt. You're just there, and the joy is overwhelming.
We're more than just going to space for a dangerous trip like we used to. Now we live here.
The sooner you can remap everything to be 3D, the quicker you'll be able to move through here.
That power of adaptation is one of the most beautiful aspects of the human mind.
You have to be able to relax, but there always has to be part of you that's ready to surge. When you see everything that you've ever known, you get this profound sense that the world is small, we are all reliant on one another, and we're all in this together.
Well, good morning. This is the joys, I guess, sometimes of having technical conferences like this, where sometimes we run into some snags along the way. We're sure that Jim will eventually be joining us back. But first and foremost, my name is Patrick O'Neill. I am with the ISS National Lab, and I am the Public Affairs and Outreach Lead. And what do you say we just get started and start to hop into some of the main sessions that are going to be happening this morning? So I, first and foremost, have had the distinct privilege of moderating this morning's keynote session for Wednesday on the 10th Annual ISS Research and Development Conference. And I am very excited to be able to have a conversation with some of the more distinguished scientific minds within the space and research community. Moreover, I look at this conversation because it should be a lot of fun, because it will allow for us to not only hit on the science that's taking place on the ISS, but also the critical role of engagement and how important it is to communicate what's happening in space and the relevancy of space-based R&D and the impact it has on our daily lives. How can it inspire the next generation? How it can promote diversity of thought? How it can enable innovation, drive new markets, and ultimately bring benefits to humanity? As a communications professional, this is an area that I've had the privilege in dabbling with on behalf of the ISS National Lab for many years. However, I equally look forward to the perspective that both of our esteemed panelists have this morning. So with that, I would like to introduce both of our keynote session panelists. And I'm going to start off first and foremost with Dr. Ellen Stofan, who is the Undersecretary of Science and Research at the Smithsonian Institution. Her focus is the Smithsonian's collective scientific initiatives and commitment to research across the institution, especially addressing issues as biodiversity, global health, climate change, species conservation, astrophysics, and the search for life outside of Earth's solar system. From 2018 to 2021, Dr. Stofan was the director of the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum, and prior to that, had more than 25 years of experience in space-related organizations, including serving as NASA's chief scientist from 2013 to 2016. She is a geologist by academic and professional training and holds a doctorate from Brown University. Dr. Stofan, good morning. And then next, I would also like to introduce Dr. Thomas Zurbuchen, who is the Associate Administrator for NASA's Science Mission Directorate. He and his team are tasked with engaging the nation's science community, sponsoring scientific research, and ensuring that NASA's science missions build partnerships across disciplines and with industry and other nations to advance the frontiers of knowledge and exploration. Prior to joining NASA, Dr. Zurbuchen was a professor of space science and aerospace engineering at the University of Michigan, and was the founding director of the university's Center for Entrepreneurship in the College of Engineering. He has authored or co-authored more than 200 articles in peer-reviewed journals on solar and heliospheric phenomena. Dr. Zurbuchen, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here with you and Ellen.
Well, we're happy to have y'all here, and we got ourselves plenty of time to go out there and go through some questions. And, you know, more so than anything else, I think I'm going to start off with kind of a softball question, Dr. Zurbuchen, if that's okay with you. And actually, I think moving forward, is it okay if I call you both Thomas as well as Ellen? We'll keep it as informal as possible. Perfect. Absolutely. We'll do that. Well, then, Thomas, very, very broad question to get things started. But again, I think it's very appropriate to kickstart this conversation. In spite of some incredible worldwide challenges, the past year and a half, NASA has arguably made some incredible steps in the efforts to launch more astronauts to the ISS through the Commercial Crew Program, which will enable us to do more science, more R&D. The agency has communicated next steps with the Artemis program, wherein the first woman and the first person of color will live and work on the moon. And we've had Perseverance made its way to Mars. So it sounds like NASA's been pretty busy. What do those accomplishments mean to you, given your role within NASA, especially when we consider the challenges that humanity has faced over the last year and a half?
I want to tell you, instead of just answering the question directly, I want to tell you a little story. And that is that my daughter graduated high school, and I went to a graduation. It was outdoors, spread out in a big stadium somewhere in Virginia. And, we listened to an amazing speech by a leader who worked in the National Football League. And then the student speaker came up. And I've been to many graduations over my lifetime, but this one was really special to me because the speaker spoke about her experience during COVID, how hard it was and how difficult it was both for her personally, but also the whole circle of friends, what she learned. And in the middle of that speech, all of a sudden she switched and said, and then something happened which really made a big difference. And she talked about those NASA scientists and engineers that launched Perseverance, that then landed it on Mars, and then they flew that helicopter Ingenuity. And she said how that changed her outlook, how that inspired her, and how she learned from that team, how to persevere. And in fact, kind of, if we come together as a team, we can do amazing things. And, I'm going to answer your question now, Patrick, and that's exactly what we're about. Whether it's launching astronauts on the ISS, during the entire lifetime of that speaker, a senior in high school, astronauts have been up there and have been doing amazing research. Just absolutely incredible what has happened there. Whether it's with Commercial Crew finally materializing kind of after, of course, a lot of work and tremendous technological progress, whether it's in robotic exploration. Science is at the ISS and beyond is there to bring us forward, bring us into the future, but at the same time inspire us here on Earth. Of course, send the benefits back to us.
I think that very appropriate answer. And again, I think that to your point, one of the great conversations we always have is imploring that those that are in high school right now have never lived a day where there hasn't been someone living and working off this planet. And that's truly a phenomenal achievement that I think sometimes goes unnoticed. So that's a great perspective. And, Dr. Stofan, or Ellen, I'm sorry, I guess kind of piggybacking on what it was that Thomas just talked about, especially when you look at it from your perspective, how has the achievements of NASA over the last year and a half, how has that influenced the role of the Smithsonian Institution in communicating the importance of exploration to the general public?
I think it's had a huge effect. As Thomas was saying, the fact we got the Commercial Crew launch off early in COVID, the launch of Perseverance, the landing of Perseverance, the flights of Ingenuity, it's been incredibly inspiring. And you've seen there was a lot of media coverage of this, which was really great. And to me, it's really demonstrated again, we do amazing things with science and technology. Look at what we can absolutely accomplish. And obviously at the same time, you had scientists developing this amazing vaccine that's now keeping so many of us healthy. But I do think there's this interesting juxtaposition that frustrates a lot of us in science, is that people are ready to get behind ingenuity and get behind perseverance, and they can still be skeptical of a vaccine. And I'm really hoping that NASA, the work we do on the ISS, that's kind of a thing that everybody accepts is a great human accomplishment and gives people hope and gives them optimism. And at the Smithsonian, we really want to tell that story. Look at what science and technology and engineering can accomplish when we work together as a team. And I think if we can keep going on that message, hopefully we can get the public to understand the scientific process, how we work, how we accomplish things a little better. Agreed.
And, I think I would also kind of like to pivot and ask kind of a different question to you, Ellen, if we can, that, I think, again, first and foremost, I also want to go out there and congratulate you on your new role within the Smithsonian. However, you are no stranger to the Smithsonian's mission, having directed the National Air and Space Museum prior to your role right now. And obviously, you had an incredibly decorated career at NASA. But, it seems to me, and piggybacking on what you had just said, the last couple of years, space seems to be a really hot topic of conversation. And why do you think that it is becoming such a topic that's at the forefront and really exciting the general public? And, I think, what does that mean to you as we try to expand on the tremendous momentum that is building for space exploration and the impacts that space exploration might have on the sciences?
Well, I think going forward, people understand there's something going on that's different. And so whether it was, starting with Scott Kelly spending a year up on the International Space Station, followed by, again, celebrating this amazing 20th anniversary of, as you say, for so many kids, like this is their life. We have humans living in space. What an amazing accomplishment. And then you layer on top of that, this amazing rise of commercial spaceflight, whether it's commercial cargo, commercial crew, and obviously then you had the recent flights from Blue Origin and from Virgin Galactic. There's stuff going on. It's exciting. It's different. And that resonates with the public. They're curious about it. They want to know. And I will say, this is, again, where the role of the Smithsonian comes in. They don't totally understand it, right? I can't tell you how many times I get asked, isn't there this giant competition between the private sector and NASA? And you're like, no, we're working together. By bringing in the private sector more and more, it allows NASA to do more and more. And, Thomas and I will agree, the more NASA can do, that means more science, whether it's the understanding of humans and human health up on the space station, whether it's getting ready to launch the James Webb Space Telescope to look out into the universe, or Perseverance, getting that next step closer to possibly finding evidence of ancient life on Mars. More players means more science, means more excitement. And the more we can convey that to the public, that this isn't a competition, it's actually a collaboration that's moving us forward.
That actually sparked kind of a thought that I had, and as someone that's a communications professional within the space station community, one of the areas that I think that we have always struggled with in some ways is everyone loves the notion of smoke and fire, that we're having these rocket launches, but it's really important for us to convey why we're having these rocket launches. And as beautiful as they are, there are facilities, there are things that are residing within them that can help to advance science, can help to advance innovation. Previously, when you were with NASA, was that an area that you felt as though was sometimes difficult for us to convey to the general public as well?
I think so, because so much of what we do, like, we understand the context of it, but trying to get that across to the public, especially when there's so much noise, right? There's a lot going on in the world. And how do we rise above to say, oh my gosh, look what we're accomplishing? And when you consider that over half the population of the country now was born post-Apollo, they also don't have a lot of context to put it into. And so maybe those of us who are remember Apollo, have a different context of look what we've accomplished, look where we're going, and you see this continuum of innovation, of accomplishment, of moving towards humans on the moon and on Mars, and I think that trying to get that innovation message out is really critical, and I really give a lot of credit to how much NASA has really tried to get that message out, how CASIS has been a great partner. And this is critical. And the more we can do things, I think, that engage the public with the International Space Station, the better off we're going to be.
Agreed. Thomas, I'd actually like to kick one back over to you now. And this is kind of more focused on the sciences and in particular, research that is happening on the space station. So when we collectively talk to researchers or prospective researchers about doing R&D on the ISS, we constantly mention that this is a research environment that is unlike any other. But what do we really mean by that? And maybe as an example, say if you're a researcher in the field of physical sciences, what would be enticing about launching and conducting your science on the ISS?
I want to answer that by, I keep doing a pattern here. I want to tell you what I did last week. What I did last week is I sat on a plane and we overflew the rainforest in French Guiana. That's a rainforest in South America, right next to Brazil. And you say, why did we go there? Well, because there's an instrument up on the space station called JEDI that actually this week is making measurement of the same track. So we're actually doing calibration underflights. So I'm going to get back to your question. The space station is unique in at least three fashions. The first one is it's a victory of international collaboration, the likes of which is hard to find elsewhere. I mean, frankly, every time I see the astronauts that are up there and that they're different national kind of uniforms, it just makes me feel great. The world coming together can do amazing things. The second one is the one that you're mentioning is on the inside of the space station. We have a laboratory, the likes of which has no precedent anywhere else. The lack of kind of the microgravity environment being there over long duration is frankly creating the opportunity for doing science, both in biological and physical sciences that are frankly hard to do elsewhere. I want to just give you an example. So if you have, for example, a special form of nature, such as a Bose-Einstein condensate, we can talk about what that means, but it's a special form of nature that's really hard to do with a specific kind of set of important laboratory equipment. So basically, if you do experiments on that, so often the time period at which is limiting the experiment is the time period for a particle to fall through a given space in which that experiment is conducted. So you basically say, well, how long is that? Well, I mean, so if this is, let's say, an inch, or a fraction of an inch on Earth, that is a very short fraction, considering the Earth's gravity and so forth, very small fraction of a second. If, however, you do that up there, now you can do experiments at the time period of hours or longer, because of course the particle is floating so much, more slowly. So it's both with that, but also, of course, biological sciences that the environment is so special. I want to just add one more ingredient, and that is the different radiation environment. I think that's really important. Also, the environment in space is different than down here, and kind of as a scientist, we love that, kind of changing variables that are otherwise unescapable on Earth.
So, I guess also picking up on some of that science, Dr. Ellen. So when you were NASA's chief scientist, one of the key initiatives that you were associated with is helping to drive long-range plans to get humans to Mars. And as we know, the space-based environment has profound effects on the human body. Can you describe, some of those effects, but also, if there were some interesting findings or interesting experiments that were conducted during your time that you just thought were really enticing about how the body adapts to living and working in space?
Well, to me, again, this is one of those sort of unsung, absolute victories of the International Space Station, of how far it's gotten us over the last 20 years in getting ready to have humans be out in space for long duration, again, whether it's on the moon or onto Mars where you're either in microgravity or partial gravity. And certainly what we've learned is the effects on the human body are quite extensive. And so we've used all this time, as most of the people in this audience know, to do the research, to find the mitigations, to keep humans healthy in space. And, some of the ones I really love are the issue with bone density loss and some of the problems with vision. Well, obviously, it turns out that if diet is really important, intake of salt is really important, and even more than that, exercise is really important. And I find that amusing because as I get older, all of those things apply to us right here on Earth. So making sure that you eat right, exercise, it's important. It's really important in space to keep astronauts healthy for long duration flights, but it's also important for those of us on the ground. If you think about some of the other areas that I have found to be particularly fascinating, the effects on the human immune system, and we lose immune system function. But as we do that, we're examining and learning more and more about how our immune system actually functions. I remember being at this conference a couple years ago, and there was an amazing high school student who looked at T cell function and changes in T cell function. And you're like, God, when I was in high school, I don't think I knew what a T cell was. So really amazing research that's taking place on the ISS to help understand this with huge applications back to Earth. And again, the huge benefit of the ISS that I've really seen is allowing students to use it as a platform to do real impactful research. The final one, and this is obviously really important for getting humans out beyond low Earth orbit, are the effects of radiation. And what are mitigations that we can do? Because obviously radiation has a huge effect on the human body. We really need to figure out how to keep astronauts safe. And so whether it's how to do shielding, whether it's how to do garments, there's a lot of research going into that. But also really trying to understand how is radiation actually affecting us at the genetic level, and how does it affect different individuals? All this research brings benefits back to Earth in a way that is really, to me, quite profound and exciting.
I love that you brought up the immune investigation, especially the student investigation, because I believe that was a Genes in Space project. And next week, for instance, we're going to be having Northrop Grumman's 16th Commercial Resupply Services mission to the space station, wherein the 8th iteration of the Genes in Space program will be launching. And again, I think that's a very important thing that the space station is able to bring to us, as you alluded to, the notion that students can truly get involved in R&D on the ISS, and it's this is very, very hardcore science too. We're not, when you're looking at the ability to do DNA sequencing and opportunities like that, I guess maybe also just from your perspective with the Smithsonian, what is it like when you're able to communicate that to young people, that the space station is something that you can take advantage of to spark your interests in the sciences as well as in engineering as well?
It's one of the things we've really tried to highlight, and we've actually had a lot of the students doing experiments on the ISS come visit the Air and Space Museum and talk about some of their work there, which we really love. Because frankly, it's great for them to create this cohort, but it's really great for our visitors coming through. And I'm always hoping some 7 or 8 year old walks through and looks at one of those high school kids or college kids and says, I could do that. I could be one of these kids having experiments and out in space. One of the other things I'm really excited about is as we're renovating the museum, which I think we're going to get to in a bit, we're really changing how we're talking about the ISS, a lot more extensive coverage of the ISS, but getting people to understand what have we been doing with this amazing platform. And a lot of it is going to be this idea of humans going from visiting space to living in space, and all of the aspects, all of the research that's played into making that a viable thing.
Thomas, one of the things that we just chatted on a little bit was, the impacts that doing research on the space station could have from terrestrial benefit. And I'm a little bit biased when I ask this next question of you, given my role with the ISS U.S. National Laboratory, and part of that job is to enable access for R&D that brings value to our nation, brings benefit to life here on Earth. But as a NASA representative, what does having a national lab in space mean to you? And are there areas of R&D that you are looking forward to seeing us progress in the future that might have terrestrial impact?
Well, look, I too am excited about interactions of commercial players and other agencies that may not have space in their title, or kind of such as the NIH, the National Science Foundation, as others. For me, I think, and then one of the big victories of the space station is opening up the lab space for them, right? Which is really creating more innovation up there. For me, looking at the fundamental research and then kind of where we're going, I just want to tell you that in so many cases, fundamental research and the applications that are there later on are much more aligned than kind of at first glance. So many of the results that Ellen just talked to us about, at the beginning, were perhaps not perceived to be as useful like at the beginning than they are today. And that is just a common approach of just innovation in general, especially as you go fundamental research. The three areas I want to mention is the first one Ellen already talked about, is really thriving in deep space. Right? How do we thrive kind of at fractional gravity, different environments, different radiation environments, and how do we do that both on biological models, but then also as humans? Because I know Ellen and I feel exactly the same way. We want to go and see humans on Mars, right? So how do we do that longer trip that is there? The second one I already mentioned, which is quantum science. I do believe that quantum science is an area where important work can be done for the reasons I stated earlier. The timescales are really different, especially the scales of kind of instabilities that could build because of gravity influences or just free fall timescales. I think there's amazing work that can be done. Atom interferometry, for example, is one of those reach goals. If we can use it, we can do gravity measurements on Earth with resolutions that are 1 or 2 orders of magnitude better. Now, let me tell you what that means. If I'm trying to manage water supplies in California or in the western part of the United States, what's important is not just the water I see and I can image from the top. And there's great progress both with commercial and also government assets for that, international assets as well. What we also want to do is measure the water below the surface. And we can measure that using gravity measurements, in which basically, because of the fact that the Earth with more water in it has more gravitational pull, for that simple reason, we can measure it. And frankly, that's a very, very useful application. Atom interferometry brings us the next level there, kind of to the next step. And it uses basically these entangled states that very much the quantum applications on the station right now are exploring. So for me, that's the second one. And the third one is an area of soft matter, really unique, whether it's foams, whether it's kind of structured matter at the small scale. This is an area where also gravity is frankly, is prohibiting a lot of experimentation that we'd like to do in this very fruitful area. I'm convinced that each one of them has huge applications as we go forward. On Earth, I gave one from space, but there's many of them on Earth.
You also touched on the importance of fundamental science and the knowledge that can be gained from that science that ultimately leads itself towards applied applications. And it reminds me, yesterday we obviously had a conversation with astronaut Kate Rubins and with Dr. Francis Collins, who is the director of the NIH, where in one of their centers, the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, is presently funding a variety of research on station to advance drug discovery and drug development through its Tissue Chips in Space initiative. Additionally, next week also on Northrop Grumman CRS-16, the National Science Foundation is funding a tissue engineering investigation to equally advance fundamental knowledge for future R&D. So, part of your role, it sounds, is also helping to forge a lot of these collaborations and partnerships with entities that can leverage the space station. But how important is that, to be able to make these types of connections and to make these types of relationships so that they can advance their fundamental research investigations on the space station and the value that might bring to humanity?
Ellen, I'll let you go with that first.
Well, I think it's obviously really incredible that we're at this point and that we're making this progress. And I think the whole issue around partnerships and are we forming the right partnerships and are we bringing in the private sector? Are we bringing in companies who want to do research? Are we bringing in the broadest possible coalition of universities, including, frankly, universities who may have felt left out or that they didn't have a path into this kind of research is also an area that I think is really critical. Because to me, it actually does get back to the whole issue. The more people we have involved from the more organizations, the more science we're going to get done, the more innovation you're going to see. And that is really, to me, one of the most significant things of having this long-term research platform where we can be doing both fundamental research as well as applied research. And I don't want to lose this point of fundamental research because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so the more we can do things like a lot of the combustion research that's going on, the research Thomas was talking about with the Bose-Einstein condensates, we don't know what we're going to find out on some level. We know it's going to be amazing, and we know it's going to help fundamentally move us forward. This is why the American economy has been so strong over the years, because we invested over the decades in fundamental research, and we've got to keep doing it. It's critically important, and the ISS National Lab and the ISS platform is a critical part of, to me, a fundamental research that's going on in this country.
Yeah, and I just want to add, Ellen, you said it already. I'll use slightly different words, but when you're in the innovation game, in which we're kind of inventing a new world of the future, it's not just only more research, but it's more different research, right? It is really critical that we have different viewpoints in the room. That's why I'm equally passionate about these great individuals that we have not created on-ramps on. And for example, minority serving institutions, that needs to change. And it's not, first of all, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. But secondly, we're missing out. We need viewpoints that are represented that are not currently there. And I just, being a first in my family to graduate, I've always been very passionate about this. Yes, for much of my life, I always thought that's a disadvantage. I had, fewer people that mentored me and so forth. And God, did I learn the advantage that was, the additional viewpoint I brought to the table that others didn't have, right? And again, more different.
It's almost as though you were reading my mind, Thomas, because the next question I have was for Ellen, and it kind of builds on that, where humanity is changing, space is changing. I very much so love the new mantra that NASA has rolled out with the Artemis program, where the first woman and the first person of color will have the ability to reach the moon's surface. And these are incredibly important steps for humanity as we showcase the beauty of diversity. So how is, tailoring down to the Smithsonian, how are you working to reach new and diverse audiences who previously might not have envisioned space or the sciences as avenues of opportunity?
Well, first of all, I really want to point out that this is a practical thing. Of course, everybody should participate. But from research, we know that diverse teams perform better. Diverse companies actually have higher profits. And as Thomas said, different points of view are going to lead towards innovation, because not everybody is looking at the problem from the same angle. They're coming at it from all different kinds of angles. That's where you're going to get real innovation. That's where you're going to move things forward. So to me, this is an imperative. It's not a nice to do. It's an absolute imperative. And again, that's a research-based conclusion. And so when you think about, I reflect back to when I was a kid and I was looking like, are there women in science? And all I could find were biographies of Marie Curie, which is great, but kind of limiting. But luckily we got National Geographic. And so there were stories about Jane Goodall and Mary Leakey uncovering human origins. And I thought, wow, women are out there changing the world. So at the Smithsonian, one of the things we've really been doing is reflecting on whose stories are we telling? Whose faces are we showing? Those stories are out there. You don't have to make stuff up. I mean, every kid, most kids have heard of Amelia Earhart, but so few kids have heard of Bessie Coleman, who was the first African-American woman to get a pilot's license. It was the 1920s, way before Amelia Earhart. She had to go to France to do it, because not only did the US not give pilot's license to women, they certainly didn't give them to Black Americans either. And so everybody should know her name. Those stories are out there. There's so many of them. Every kid should know who Ellen Ochoa is. Every kid should know who Charlie Bolden is. You know, these people are heroes, and we need to talk about them so that every kid says, there are people who look like me, who've accomplished amazing things. I can go do that too.
I guess one question I would ask of you, Ellen, is kind of a follow-up to that is, you know, it sounds as though, again, you know, we know that there's a lot of renovations that are happening over at the Smithsonian right now. Are some of those renovations going to be reflective of what it was that we just discussed right now, where we are trying to show different viewpoints, different individuals from different walks of life, so that we are able to truly inspire all young people around the world?
Absolutely. You know, unfortunately, we've been having to rebuild the National Air and Space Museum on the mall. Right now, the east end of the building is open. The west end is undergoing renovation. Late next year, we'll swap that. We'll reopen the newly designed, all new galleries, new artifacts, but still some of your favorites, don't worry, on the west end. And we'll close the east end and renovate it. The whole project will be done in 2025. In time for the 50th anniversary of the Air and Space Museum in 2026. But absolutely, that's one of the things we're really changing, is how do we make this more of an experience for people? How do we really tell these stories? The familiar stories will be there, certainly. We're going to have Chuck Yeager's, you know, Bell X-1 that broke the speed of sound, but we're also going to talk about Jackie Cochran, who was the first woman to break the speed of sound. So we're going to try to tell many more stories, make the stories more diverse, more inclusive, but really add hopefully a lot of excitement into the Air and Space Museum. And I'm afraid I have to say, one of the artifacts that I'm the most excited about that's on loan from Lucasfilm, we're actually also going to have an X-Wing fighter in there, which I'm really excited about.
Well, I look forward to seeing that, and all the other things that are going to be popping up as well. I mean, it's always been an experience to go to the Air and Space Museum. And, you know, as we continue to add more elements in there, I'm sure that it's going to only drive more people to want to learn about the great things that humanity has collectively done in space. And so, you know, with that, I do have one final question for the both of you, and then we're going to turn it over to a couple of audience Q&As. So the space station has been around for more than 20 years with continuous human habitation. More than 3,000 experiments have been conducted during its existence, representing a myriad of research disciplines. Hundreds of astronauts from all different walks of life have lived and worked together during that time span on the space station. Even in the coming months, we're going to start to have private astronauts that will potentially launch to the orbiting platform. That said, at some juncture, we will move on from this incredible learning facility. So for both of you, what is it that you hope is the enduring legacy of the International Space Station?
You know, I'll start and briefly and then turn it over to Thomas. You know, we've learned to live in space. You know, and that sounds incredibly simple. You know, Thomas and I could list loads of accomplishments, loads of spin-offs, technologies, new things, but we have learned to live in space. And to me, that is profound.
And we've learned to do that as an international community together, right? So for me, exploring together makes exploration bigger. And so for me, that is the second piece. I think that will always be in our minds when we think about the space station. I think finally, what's coming next, the stations that are going to be there, whether with commercial partnerships or beyond, the stations in the international community, stations around the moon, eventually at Mars, on the surface and beyond. None of them is possible without the learnings that came from the space station. And so all of these will be benefiting from it, and we will never forget that.
Great. Well, Thomas, Ellen, you know, I think that those are the questions I have, but it looks like we have a little bit of time to ask a couple of questions from the audience. And, you know, it appears as though we have a student that has proposed a question where NASA has always made me ambitious about space, science, and robotics. But as a 12-year-old, I always wanted to be involved in their missions. Is there a way to be involved in any way? So maybe, Ellen, that's a starting question for you, and then possibly Thomas.
Sure. I think really the first thing you need to do is really nurture this love and stick with it, because we really are going to need you possibly to be the first person to walk on Mars. So I'm really excited that you're so engaged and excited about this. I think the important thing to do is to really keep up. NASA has amazing websites. So do we at the Smithsonian. There's all kinds of activities you can do. There's all kinds of different, we have all kinds of videos on the Air and Space site about things that you can learn about every topic across space, interviews with astronauts, all these kinds of stories that Thomas was telling, really amazing stories of successes in space. So I would urge you to go to both NASA's website and look at the educational stuff, and also our website at the National Air and Space Museum.
I want to add one more piece. Of course, I agree with everything that Ellen just said very much, but there's one more thing that I'd really like to engage you in also, and that is what we call citizen science. So it's kind of a mouthful, but what I really mean with that is being actually part of the science program that we do by engaging directly. We have citizen scientists who have found planets, exoplanets. That's those planets around other stars somewhere else in our galaxy. We have citizen scientists who are actively part of tracking organisms or plants on Earth. We are, of course, have citizen scientists that are involved directly in work that happens on the space station. So go find the project that you are most excited about, and perhaps with the help of some people around you initially, but engage, kind of learn that you too can do science. You can, yes, of course, learn about it from others, but you too can do science, because once you learn that, I have to tell you, it's addicting. I remember exactly when I figured something out, the moment when I figured something out that nobody else knew on Earth, that moment about nature. And, nature is so beautiful and so amazing. It's so worth getting engaged in it.
So, Thomas, you actually brought up something that was going to be one of the next questions that I was going to focus on, was actually that of citizen science. And someone asked the question, would you please share the name of the instrument you mentioned from the rainforest and the calibration with the ISS, and how may citizen scientists and or students be engaged with this program?
So the instrument is called JEDI, which is just like you think. It's kind of a Star Wars reference, but it's the Global Ecosystem Dynamics Investigation. Global Ecosystem Dynamics Investigation. I quickly want to tell you what it is, right? You think JEDI, well, what does that do? Well, it's a LiDAR, kind of a micron, so it's kind of, a millionth of a yard, in terms of the wavelength that basically is out there on the space station, and is basically actively, as the space station flies over the tropical zone and beyond, all the way to kind of the lower parts of England, and then also in the south, is basically bouncing off that surface. And what's really exciting, it's basically going through some of the plants, and really can look at changes below it, whether it's volcanic activities, but also changes that come from landslides as well as from other things. So that's the JEDI investigation. And there are, in fact, citizen science programs that relate to some of this. And I just go, frankly, the way I go find them, because I keep forgetting the URL. I just say NASA Citizen Science. The first link is precisely where you want to be, and it gives you an inventory of things that you can do. I just want you to say how excited I am about the fact that if there's researchers listening here, I want to tell you how excited I am that we have so many more research investigations now proposed that directly include citizen science. That too is a way that researchers can help figure out where citizen scientists can really help advanced research. And there's a lot of publications, and we can share both on that side and otherwise, publications that have really to breakthrough science in which citizen scientists are critical parts of it.
Yeah, and I really want to give a shout out to the JEDI mission, understanding the health of our forests, looking at how forests are regrowing, look at forest protected areas. This is really critical for climate change to have these data. And I will say, on the Smithsonian, we do a lot of the research on the ground on monitoring forest restoration, and the data that's being returned from JEDI is really exciting. And I love the citizen science that all of these missions now at NASA are including.
That actually got me to think about just one final question, and then I'm going to go. I think we'll be pressed for time at that juncture. But, on the notion of conservation, sustainability, how is it that the space station can play a critical role in making sure that we are able to have a better planet for ourselves and for the next generations to come? I mean, are there things in particular that we can take advantage of that maybe we have not yet done thus far?
Every aspect to me of it, the space station, it has to be a sustainable system, right? You have to have clean air. You have to limit the carbon dioxide inside of it. You have to have a sustainable water system. We're going to have to figure out how to do for longer duration missions out into space. We're going to have to figure out how to have food and clothing even that is reusable, recyclable. And all of those things I just said, we need to do that for planet Earth. And so I really love the idea of the ISS as an analogy for how we need to live on this planet. And the more we develop these techniques on the ISS, the more benefit they bring back to Earth.
I totally agree with that. And I would also feel that, Patrick, you refer to yourself as a communications professional, right? Feel free to tell the stories of the investigations that are on the station that do the amazing earth science work right now, the ozone work, looking at lightning distributed there, eco-stress, which is another really important investigation focused on the tropical zone, JEDI, and others. Kind of go tell that story. In addition, I believe that the science, the images, there's so many times, both Ellen and I, of course, are tweeting at each other on social media often, and I admire things that she finds, but so often she knows, and we both have found images from the space station of our beautiful home planet that gives that important viewpoint from outside, showing our planet as a system of systems that are really related to and is affecting all of us. The vantage point of the space station is critical all by itself.
I think also with that vantage point too, I always love to get the perspective of astronauts when they are up on station. And one of the very first things that they always notice when they look down back on the planet is the notion that we don't see borders, we don't see anything of that nature. We just see one planet where we are all collectively, we're in this together. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we find solutions so that we are able to live in harmony, both in this generation as well as the next generation. So again, and Thomas, to your point, I think that it's incumbent upon myself as well as all of us from a communications perspective to be able to effectively talk about the research that's happening on station and the relevancy that it has to our lives here on Earth. So with that, though, I certainly want to thank both Ellen and Thomas for your time this morning. Hopefully the audience found that this was an engaging opportunity to learn a little bit about some of the science that's happening, but also ways in which entities like a Smithsonian are helping to engage the public as well, so that we're cognizant of all of the great people that are involved in helping to have platforms like a space station, or what we are doing to be able to go beyond the space station, whether that be the moon or eventually Mars. So again, thank you very much for your time this morning. And with that, I think that I'm going to try to turn it back over to our MC for the day, Jim Way, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick, and Thomas and Ellen. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. You guys talked about more and different research, and so we're going to continue right along with that theme, and we're going to transition to our next panel, Tissue Chips in Space, Exploring Therapeutic Drug Development and Countermeasures. To attend that next session, please be sure to click on the orange button under the panel session title in the attendee hub. Just go up to the top of your screen up there and click over. And that will start in about 5 minutes, right at 11 o'clock. So we'll see you there. Thanks, everybody.